Hey, you gits! Yeah, it's actually IRL me this time. I was thinking about maybe having Glitzdakka narrate this one, but I'm talking about so much stuff with the game and my IRL experience that I thought it would be a little too meta even for orcs. So, all I can say right now is, sure it's a great time to love orcs. During and after recording this video, I couldn't count a single day that there hasn't been some big announcement or some huge leak to the Ork Codex that's coming out for Warhammer 40k. Sorry, newcomers. By Codex, I mean the big book of rules, lore, and art, and so on that each faction gets that makes them special. And after the okay Codex of 9th edition and the disappointing index rules that completely removed any sort of flash or snaz from the orcs, basically making every orc unit a goth that just runs up and hit things, ooh, he's eating good now. With 6 brand new detachments coming out, there really is something for everyone here now. Like, first of all, the speed freaks are sure gonna be happy with the return of the Cult of Speed and its new rules. If you're a fan of fast cars, fast buggies, fast jets, and lots of Dakka, you really are in luck. Because those are the 2 things that this detachment's really good at. Being able to move, advance, shoot, fall back, shoot, advance, charge. Like, Cult of Speed's never been for me, but I am exceptionally happy for you gits. And I'm also happy for those of you that like bossy mobs full of knobs, mega knobs, and battle wagons, because that's apparently what's going to be the army theme for the Bully Boys. That and multiple was. I can't wrap my brain around that. Multiple was. Personally, I don't think there's enough Dakka between all the knobs to really make me happy, but an all knobs theme army, I can dig it. And I mean, I could say the same about the Green Tide rules. It's not for me, but man, I'm glad it's there. If you like boys and nothing but boys, this is all you need. Not only do they get a lot of defensive and offensive bonuses, like their detachment rule just gives them a 5-up invuln, which with 120 bodies on the table, that's kinda nuts. And I know there are at least a couple stratagems that rely on you just piling in boys into melee combat and letting even more of them get in on the action. And if some of the boys die, well, you've got the stratagem Come On Lads, which lets you just refill the unit. Now bugs ain't the only ones that can get more gits in play. And you know what? I'm even happy for you beast snagga lovers. And I hate beast snaggas for a multitude of reasons. None of which are because I think they aren't orky or cool, but because good old GW decided to overclock their stats when they came out, cracking them out so bad that they became an auto-include, and basically in the 10th Ed Codex were the only things that could be used to take down vehicles, which, wow, really? Overclocking a brand new set of units to absurd levels in order for them to sell? Yeah, that's not anti-consumer and just leaving everybody else out in the cold who would like something besides more snake bites. Because meanwhile, the other unit that's supposed to kill big monsters and big tanks are the tank hunters, which still have to take their stupid default loadout, which, for Gork's sake, just let me drop the freaking pistols and hammer and just give me more rocket launchers. And I know for a fact that this is going to remain unchanged even when the Codex comes out, because we gotta sell them models and have people use them as is. I hate it so much. I hate it even more than the monopose boys, and every orc player I know hates those things. Sorry, I know I'm going on a tangent, but my point is just let us have some variety instead of just overpowered beast snaggas who I have zero aesthetic interest in. How about some balance, GW? How about some variety? No, not that, no! Look, I love Stompas. I collect Stompas. I love them to bits. I love the concept of giant orc robots. But by Gork's grin, this box sucks! Like, realistically, the only good thing in this box are the looters, which, yes, always give me more Dakka, please. And then we've got that new mech, which, yeah, thanks for making me buy all of this in order to get this one model. But hey, you know, there's always eBay, I suppose, except, oh wait, scalpers are already on that, and GW still isn't doing anything about it. So we got a group of monopose boys, and I already ranted about how much I hate that by design, so now we've got the truck and the Stompa, and oh my Zog! Have you ever tried building one of these? Because I've built both. They are both insanely convoluted. The parts don't fit well, like dry fitting and then gluing. There are tons of tiny pieces that really don't have to be so tiny. And all in all, it doesn't support itself very well. Like when you're trying to glue these things together, you've got to hold it in such a weird, awkward way just to get it to stay together. And then when you think it's glued together, you put it down and let it sit by itself, and then it just all concave falls in inward. Like, don't get me started on the Stompa. You see that big fat bulbous body? You actually have to take 3 sheets. It's like taking a cone and splitting it into 3 pieces, and you gotta re-glue it back together. Except there's no clear-cut lines. It's all jagged sheet metal, which is great aesthetically, but God, it's so hard to work with. And yeah, this thing is an absolute nightmare to build, and you think that maybe good instructions would offset that, but no! Have you seen these instructions? I honestly think they were printed on a black and white printer from 15 years ago. There's no numeral values between all the pieces. You really can't even see the pieces half the time and figure out how to put them together. Nothing dry fits very well, and unless you use a bunch of magnets, which I do because I'm a magnet fiend, it is so easy for all these gubbins to just snap off. You've got to mag the head, both arms, the smokestacks, the grot tower, and the boss pole. Otherwise, this thing is going to be in pieces unless you're really, really gentle with it. And when you're on the tabletop and you got to move something this big, you can't really be that gentle with it. And even all of that would be fine if it was playable. But I don't know if it is. It's 800 points out of a 2,000 point army that you're allowed to have, and despite all that Dakka, it's not only a struggle to hit anything, because, you know, orc aiming is always a 5-up, which I don't personally mind. It's just, when it comes to wounding, that is another wall all its own to get around. I mean, sure, that def cannon has some really scary stats, but like, an average of 3 hits happen, and then only after that, maybe 1 or 2 wounds happen, so the shooting just feels like garbage. And you'd think at 30 wounds it would be able to stick around, but this thing always is just dead at turn 2. It doesn't even need full focus fire by the enemy army to bring it down, it just dies in turn 2. And then it's just game over, mate, because most Ork players can agree, for an 800 point model, you can maybe kill 500 points worth of enemy units before this dies. So unless this thing drops in points or gets better stats, it just ain't worth it. But honestly, for me, there is one glimmer of hope in all of this, an absolute return to Orky form, if you will. The Dread Mob detachment, already confirmed to be coming out for the Ork Codex of 10th edition. And I know some of you thinking, oh, well, GimGam, didn't you just get done whining about the Stompa sucking so bad? What is all of this? Well, this is the glorious thing. A Dread Mob isn't just a Stompa, despite what this box may say. Dread Mobs are about Stompas, sure, but also Killicans, Def Dreads, Mega Dreads, Mecha Dreads, Gorkanauts, Morkanauts. I wasn't kidding back in my past video when I said if you love giant mechs and robots, you will love orcs. Cause this is the perfect example of how Ork Tech got me to fall in love with the faction in the first place. Dread Mob, detachment rule, try that button. Every time a mech, orc walker, or grot vehicle unit shoots or does a melee attack, roll a d6. On a 1 or a 2, if you roll a 6 to attack, it multiplies. If you roll a 3 or a 4, every time you roll a 6 to attack, it automatically wounds. And if you roll a 5 or a 6, well, that means when you roll to wound, if you get a 6, you get an additional AP -2, which is insane. I know there's a lot of you out there who don't understand how the rules work and why this is so important, but let me just put it this way. Let's say you have a 9mm pistol, and then once in a while, your 9mm pistol can shoot a 50 caliber bullet. Yeah, it's basically that. Or, and here's the best part, you can actually choose one of these 3 bonuses and then do a hazard test, which means you actually blow up if you roll a 1 or 2 if it already has hazardous, like a Mega Blaster. And when I say blow up, if it's a vehicle, monster, or character, it deals 3 mortal/unavoidable wounds to it, but if it's a regular infantry model, it just gets straight up scragged. To me, this is the epitome of orkdom in 40k. This is exactly what orcs should be. Risk versus reward has always been at the heart of orcs, because if you're really deep down an orc player and you blow up, it's hilarious. You can't even be mad at it because it's so spectacularly stupid. In fact, you can actually win games by doing this. I actually won a game one time because after my Stompa got killed in turn 2, of course, I rolled a 6 to see if it would explode because it has that rule. Well, it did, and I played the stratagem Kareen, which allowed me to run my Stompa into my opponent's army, then blew half of the entire entire army up with 2d6 mortal wounds. And I think this is why orc players tend to be the most chill, because when it comes to orcs, half the time, you do blow up, and you gotta be able to laugh that off. In fact, sometimes blowing yourself up can be the highlight of the game because of how massive and spectacular it could be. And this detachment, the Dread Mob, it just double downs on that entire concept. And not just the core detachment rule, but everything that I've seen, confirmed rumor or whatever, between the stratagems and the enhancements, it all has you being able to do some insane damage or blowing yourself up. Bigger shells for bigger gits? Basically, when you're shooting at a vehicle or a big monster model, you can use this stratagem to help you make a +1 to your wound roll, which is huge because, like I said, only beast snaggas before had even a chance of taking vehicles and monsters down. Now, instead of trying to wound something on a 4 or 5 up roll, it's like a 3 or 4, and that might seem small, but that is a huge buff where you will do an additional damage per shot. And again, considering how much orcs shoot, that can add up a lot of damage really quick considering how much volumetric fire they have. Like dumping an entire Kilocan's group's worth of rockets into a tank with an average of being able to do 4 wounds out of all of their attacks and in turn doing about 3 damage. But turning 3 damage into 4 and getting a +1 to wound is a huge deal. Rockets are strength 9, most tanks are tough 10, which means you're gonna need 5s to wound it, but now because of the stratagem, you're only gonna need 4, and not only are you gonna be doing more 3 damage per shot, it's gonna be 4 now, which is a huge deal. But again, like I said, now you have to do a hazardous test, which if you roll a 1, you're blowing up. And then you've got the Dakka stratagem, which is one of my personal favorites for obvious reasons. This allows an orc walker or vehicle the ability to re-roll ones when trying to hit. But if you push it, those weapons gain hazardous and you can re-roll all hit rolls. All of them. You are an orc. You are averaging 12 to upwards of 30 shots per vehicle. That is huge. But again, if you roll a 1, you blow up. And then there's the Clank and Claw stratagem. Orc walkers get +2 strength to their melee weapons, which is already nuts, going from an average of strength 9 to strength 11, which is key to cutting tanks in half when their toughness is 10. And again, you're an orc, you're going to be meleeing many times. But if you push it, you can do 1 more damage with the attack, but again, you get the hazardous trait with your weapons, so if you roll a 1, you blow up! And even with the Stompa, the one model I couldn't stop complaining about, from how difficult it was to build, to its stat line, to how it costs 800 ZOGGIN points. Well, if all these stratagems could be used and this random buff table could apply to it, I actually think it might be worth all these points. It might be decent. I don't know, but I'm sure Zog gonna find out. It just goes to show, if you've been watching my videos here and wondering how much fun it might be to start with an Orcs army and learn the game, this is the ZOGGIN time! Whether you like me and you love the concept of orc robots, or maybe the idea of a full army green tide of boys is really good for you, or an army of knobs and armored knobs would be really cool, or a fanatical army of orcs speeding in a race to battle, or even if you adore beast snaggas, this is the time. I can safely say, and many others will agree, this is the best the Ork Codex and rules have been in a long time. Some would even say, ever. So, get on it, you ZOGGIN kits! Glitzdakka, take us out!
So as always, you little kits, sub up and zog off!